Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going back in time to ancient Rome to explore a place that's captivated imaginations for centuries, the Colosseum.
A fitting choice.
Gladiatorial combat, roaring crowds, the drama of life and death, all playing out on this massive stage.
Oh, got it.
We sent over some audio from Dan Snow's History Hit podcast, and I'm really eager to unpack the stories behind this iconic landmark.
It's really interesting how the Colosseum isn't just about the spectacle. It's also a window into Roman society. You can see their politics, their engineering genius, and the complex moral landscape of the time all in one place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to really understand how important it was, we need to understand the world in which it was built. So let's rewind the clock way back to the year 64 AD.
Okay.
Rome, a city at the heart of a vast empire.
Yeah.
But it's engulfed in flames.
Oh, yeah.
The Great Fire has just ravaged the city, leaving just a trail of destruction and despair in its wake.
And it's against this backdrop of devastation that Emperor Nero decides to construct his lavish Domus Aurea, a golden palace just sprawling across a vast swath of the devastated city. Now, Nero's known for his excesses.
Yes.
And his love of spectacle, so you can imagine how this went over.
Yeah, talk about adding insult to injury. Nero's extravagance was already a point of contention.
Yeah.
This move really just intensified public resentment.
Exactly. It was a blatant display of imperial power at a time when so many Romans were just struggling to rebuild their lives.
Right.
And this, coupled with Nero's increasingly erratic behavior and political maneuvering, it led to his downfall just a few years later.
Okay, so this sets the stage for a power vacuum and a period of intense instability, right?
Exactly.
But tell me about that.
The year of the 4 emperors that followed was a time of just intense turmoil and bloodshed.
Wow.
Each emperor meeting a gruesome end. It really highlights the precarious nature of power and the ruthlessness of Roman politics.
It sounds like something straight out of a historical thriller. So from this chaos, a new leader emerges, Vespasian. What made him different from his predecessors?
Vespasian was different. He was a seasoned military leader with a reputation for practicality and competence. Unlike Nero, he focused on restoring order, consolidating power, and projecting an image of strength and stability.
So a much-needed change of pace.
And one of his most ambitious undertakings was the construction of the Colosseum.
Now, he didn't just choose any location for this grand project, did he?
You're right about that. He decided to build it on the very site of Nero's opulent palace.
Wow, why there?
So this was a strategic move with multiple layers of significance.
Okay.
By repurposing the land associated with Nero's excesses, Vespasian was sending a very clear message, like a new era has begun, one marked by pragmatism and connection with the people.
It's a powerful statement, almost like reclaiming the space for the people and dedicating it to something that everyone could enjoy.
Exactly. The Colosseum wasn't intended as some kind of exclusive playground for the elite. It was designed to be accessible to all Romans, regardless of social standing, a place where they could come together and experience the grandeur of the empire.
So from the outset, the Colosseum was imbued with political significance, a symbol of Vespasian's new regime, a way to connect with the populace, and a demonstration of Rome's enduring power.
And it achieved this through a combination of architectural grandeur and the captivating spectacles it hosted. Think of it as a potent mix of propaganda and entertainment designed to solidify the Flavian dynasty's hold on power.
It's amazing how they seamlessly blended politics and entertainment. Speaking of the Colosseum's architecture, it was an engineering marvel for its time, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, the Colosseum was a testament to Roman engineering prowess.
Yeah.
It could hold over 50,000 spectators, with its soaring arches reaching heights that wouldn't be seen again for centuries.
It's hard to even fathom the scale and complexity of its construction. What were some of the key engineering innovations that made the Colosseum so impressive?
Well, Roman engineers skillfully employed arches, vaults, and concrete on a monumental scale. I mean, they devised these ingenious methods for lifting and transporting these massive stone blocks, including systems of pulleys, ramps, and cranes, all powered by human labor.
And that brings us to a darker aspect of its construction. The labor force that built the Colosseum was largely made up of slaves, a stark reminder of the inequalities that permeated Roman society.
Unfortunately, yes, that's true. Slavery was a deeply ingrained part of Roman life, and the construction of the Colosseum relied heavily on their forced labor. Thousands of slaves toiled under harsh conditions, and many perished during the construction process.
It's sobering thought that the grandeur of the Colosseum was built on the backs of these individuals whose stories are often overlooked.
Yeah,
It really underscores the complex moral landscape of the Roman world.
you're right. It's important to acknowledge this aspect even as we marvel at the architectural achievements. The Colosseum's history is really a tapestry woven with threads of both brilliance and brutality.
It definitely adds a layer of depth and complexity to our understanding.
Right.
So we've set the stage with the political context and the engineering marvel that is the Colosseum. Very eager to delve into the heart of what made it so captivating, the spectacles themselves. So we left off talking about the Colosseum as this symbol of power and unity, but also built with a lot of forced labor. Now, I'm really curious to hear about the events that took place inside. What kinds of spectacles did the Romans put on for their massive crowds?
Well, when you think of the Colosseum, you probably think gladiatorial combat.
Right.
But the Romans were masters of entertainment. I mean, they offered a variety of spectacles that went far beyond just gladiators fighting.
Okay, so like what else? Like chariot races, like in Ben-Hur.
Oh, chariot races were actually held at the Circus Maximus, not the Colosseum.
Okay.
But the Colosseum had its own share of thrilling events. Imagine exotic animals, lions, tigers, even elephants, brought from all corners of the empire to roam the arena floor.
Wait, they had wild animals in the Colosseum. What would they do? Just let them wander around?
No, not quite. These events were called venations, and they were essentially wild animal hunts staged for the entertainment of the masses. Sometimes they would pit animals against each other, or they would have trained hunters called bestiarii fight the animals.
Wow, that's intense. I mean, it must have been quite a spectacle to see a lion or an elephant up close in the Colosseum.
Right.
What about the bestiarii you mentioned? Who were they, and how did they prepare for such a dangerous job?
The bestiarii were a fascinating group. Some were condemned criminals forced to fight, while others were skilled professionals who made a living hunting wild animals. They would train in specific techniques for handling different animals using a variety of weapons, like spears, nets, and even whips.
It's hard to imagine the courage it must have taken to face a charging beast, especially with thousands of people watching. Did these hunts always end in death for the animal or the bestiary?
Unfortunately, death was a frequent outcome,
Yeah.
but survival was possible, and a skilled bestiarius could gain fame and fortune.
Oh, wow.
There are records of some who became renowned for their prowess and survived many encounters.
It's fascinating how, even in this brutal context, there were opportunities for certain individuals to rise above their circumstances. But it's a stark reminder that entertainment often came at a high cost for both humans and animals.
Absolutely. The ethical considerations are certainly complex, especially when viewed through a modern lens. But anyway, back to the spectacles, you might be surprised to learn that they even staged mock naval battles in the Colosseum.
Naval battles, how did they manage that? Did they actually, bring in ships and flood the arena?
You got it. These events were called namachiae, and they were truly spectacular feats of engineering.
Wow.
The Romans had a complex system of aqueducts and underground channels that allowed them to flood the entire arena floor with water.
Oh, wow.
Then they would bring in specially built warships manned by hundreds of rowers and fighters to reenact historical battles or create these elaborate naval displays.
That's incredible. I mean, the logistics involved must have been mind-boggling. Did they use actual soldiers for these battles? Or was it more like a theatrical performance?
Well, the participants in the namachiae were often prisoners of war or condemned criminals forced to fight.
Oh.
So while there was certainly a performative element to these events, the fighting was real, and many lost their lives in these simulated naval battles.
It's both impressive and disturbing to think about the lengths they went to for entertainment.
Sure.
Essentially recreating entire environments within the Colosseum, transforming it from a gladiatorial arena to a forest, a hunting ground, or even a vast lake for naval warfare.
Exactly. The Colosseum wasn't just a fixed stage. It was this dynamic space that could be adapted for a wide range of events, all designed to amaze and captivate the audience. And we haven't even touched on the elaborate stagecraft they employed to enhance these spectacles.
Stagecraft, you mean they had special effects and props back then?
You could say that. Beneath the arena floor was this complex network of tunnels, chambers, and platforms.
Okay.
It's known as the hypogeum.
The hypogeum, what was its purpose?
Well, the hypogeum served multiple purposes.
Okay.
It housed the cages for the animals, holding areas for gladiators, storage spaces for props and scenery.
Okay.
But it also contained a system of trapdoors, elevators, and ramps that allowed for these really dramatic entrances and exits.
Oh, so they could make animals or gladiators appear and disappear seemingly out of nowhere.
Right.
That must have been really impressive for the audience.
It certainly was. Imagine a gladiator suddenly emerging from the ground or a lion leaping onto the arena floor through a trapdoor. The element of surprise and spectacle was very carefully orchestrated.
It's amazing how much thought and planning went into creating these immersive experiences.
Yeah.
It's like they were masters of illusion and stagecraft.
They certainly were. The Colosseum wasn't just some brute display of force, it was this carefully crafted experience designed to evoke a range of emotions, from awe and excitement to fear and suspense. And all of this was achieved through a combination of human ingenuity, skilled craftsmanship, and, yes, a lot of manpower.
Speaking of manpower, we've talked about the bestiary and the spectacle of the events, but I'm really curious to hear more about the gladiators themselves. I mean, they were the stars of the show, right?
Absolutely. The gladiators were the heart of the Colosseum's entertainment, and their lives were full of contradictions and complexities.
That's a perfect transition into our next segment, where we'll delve deeper into the world of the gladiators, their training, their fighting styles, and the social dynamics that shape their lives. We've talked about the Colosseum's grandeur, the spectacles, the wild animals, even mock naval battles. But now I want to shift our focus to the individuals at the heart of it all, the gladiators. Who were these warriors, and what were their lives really like?
The gladiators really occupy a unique space in our collective imagination. We
Yeah.
picture them as these powerful figures, masters of combat, almost mythical in their status. But their lives were far more nuanced than that.
Right. They were often slaves forced into this brutal profession. But there also seems to have been this strange dichotomy. They were revered by the crowds, almost like celebrities. So how do we reconcile these two sides of the gladiatorial experience?
It's a really complex issue, and it speaks to the contradictions inherent in Roman society itself. On the one hand, gladiators were viewed as disposable entertainment, their lives literally at the whim of the crowd. But on the other hand, they embodied courage, skill, and this willingness to face death with defiance, all qualities that the Romans admired.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's almost like they were both feared and adored,
Yeah.
like heroes and victims at the same time.
Exactly.
Can we dive a little deeper into their training? We've touched on it briefly, but I'm curious about the specifics. What kind of rigorous training did these warriors undergo to prepare for the arena?
Gladiators were trained in specialized schools called ludus. Think of it as a combination of a military academy and a training camp.
Okay.
They were overseen by lanista, who were former gladiators or seasoned trainers who pushed recruits to their limits.
So these lanista were like drill sergeants, shaping these raw recruits into formidable fighters.
That's a good way to put it. The training regimen was intense and multifaceted. It wasn't just about learning to wield a sword or a net. Gladiators were conditioned for strength, agility, and endurance. They learned to fight with a variety of weapons and armor, and each ludus often specialized in a particular fighting style.
So I imagine there were different types of gladiators, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, almost like, character classes in a video game.
Exactly. The Romans loved variety.
Yeah.
And they categorized gladiators into different classes based on their fighting style and equipment.
Oh, yeah.
For example, there was the retiarius who fought with a net and trident.
Hmm.
And they were often pitted against the heavily armored sicutor.
The classic matchup.
Yeah.
Agility versus brute force. I bet those were some exciting battles to watch.
Oh, they were crowd favorites. There was also the thrax armed with a small shield and a curved sword, and the murmillo who wore a distinctive helmet with a fish crest. Each class had its own tactical advantages and disadvantages, and the Lanistae would, strategize about the best matchups to create these compelling contests.
So it was a very carefully calculated form of entertainment, not just random fighters thrown into the arena. There must have been rules and guidelines to ensure a certain level of fairness and order.
You're right, there were referees who enforced the rules,
Okay.
and specific actions were prohibited. It was still brutal, but there was a sense of honor and sportsmanship within this violent spectacle.
Okay, I have to ask, did all gladiatorial combats end in death? Or was there a chance for survival even for those who lost?
Well, it's a common misconception that gladiators always fought to the death.
Oh, really?
While death was a very real possibility, it wasn't the only outcome. The decision to spare or kill a defeated gladiator often rested with the emperor or the crowd.
So a gladiator's fate could hinge on the whims of the audience. That's incredible, and frankly, a bit terrifying.
Yeah, the crowd held a surprising amount of power. They could cheer for mercy or demand a death blow with a simple gesture. A skilled gladiator who fought bravely and entertained the crowd was more likely to be spared. It was almost like a twisted performance review where their life depended on audience approval.
It's a stark reminder of the power of public opinion, even in ancient Rome. And it really speaks to the complex relationship between gladiators and the people who watched them. It wasn't just about bloodlust. There was admiration, perhaps even a sense of empathy mixed in with the spectacle.
Absolutely. It's a complex issue that continues to fascinate historians and archaeologists today. We're still piecing together the social dynamics of gladiatorial culture, the lives of these warriors outside the arena, their relationships with their trainers, even their hopes and dreams.
It's a reminder that history is more than just dates and events. It's about understanding the lives of individuals, even those whose stories are often overlooked. And the gladiators, despite their brutal profession, were individuals with their own hopes, fears, and ambitions.
And that's what makes the Colosseum such a compelling subject. It's not just a monument to Roman engineering or a stage for grand spectacles. It's a testament to human resilience, ambition, and the enduring power of storytelling.
Well said. The Colosseum continues to inspire awe and contemplation. It invites us to reflect on the complexities of human nature and the enduring fascination with spectacle competition and the drama of life and death. It's a place where history comes alive, where we can connect with the past in a visceral and thought-provoking way. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Colosseum.